Have you ever had that feeling? That cold dread when you get called into your boss's office on a Friday afternoon? Everyone else is packing up for the weekend and your heart is pounding, wondering what you did wrong. For 61-year-old Eleanor Vance, that feeling was about to get a whole lot worse. She'd given nearly 30 years of her life to Apex Industries. She was a loyal employee, a rule follower, a woman who believed in hard work and a fair shake. Her pension, the reward for a lifetime of labor, was just 72 hours away. But in that gleaming office of mahogany and leather, her world was about to be shattered. They thought they could discard her like a piece of old furniture, steal her future and get away with it. They made one critical mistake. They didn't know Eleanor. They didn't know about her meticulous nature. And they certainly didn't know about the fireproof lockbox she'd kept hidden in her closet for the past 4 years. A box that held enough secrets to bring the entire Apex Industries Corporation crashing down in flames. This is the story of how one woman who was counted out flipped the script on the powerful men who wronged her, proving that sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one you should fear the most. Eleanor, you've been with us 29 years, is it? Bryce Calloway leaned back in his leather chair, his voice eerily casual. He was the new money, fresh out of business school type, with an expensive suit and a smile that looked practiced in a mirror. 29 years and 362 days, to be exact, I replied, my stomach nodding as I noticed the manila folder on his desk. In all my years at Apex Industries, one of Cleveland's largest manufacturing firms, I'd never been called into a director's office on a Friday afternoon. Something was wrong. My name is Eleanor Vance. I'm 61 years old, and until 5 minutes ago, I was the senior compliance officer. I'd spent nearly 3 decades ensuring Apex operated within legal parameters, documenting irregularities, and standing firm when others wanted easy solutions to complex problems. My pension was set to fully vest on Monday, just 3 days away. The milestone I'd worked my entire adult life for was within reach. Bryce slid the folder across his polished desk. Due to budget constraints, we're letting you go. His eyes never met mine. Effective immediately. The room seemed to tilt slightly. Budget constraints? Apex had just announced record profits last quarter. This is your severance package, he continued, tapping the folder with his manicured finger. Sign by tomorrow or you get nothing. HR will escort you to clean out your desk. I should have felt anger, shock, perhaps even the urge to plead. Instead, a strange calm washed over me. This wasn't random. This was calculated, precisely timed to fall just before my pension vested. Thank you for the opportunity, I said quietly, picking up the folder. I didn't open it. Bryce looked surprised by my composure, perhaps expecting tears or protests, but I'd spent my career examining patterns, and this one was clear as day. I stood, smoothed my skirt, and walked out with my dignity intact. Janet from HR hovered awkwardly as I packed my personal items. The photo of my late husband, Thomas, the potted plant my daughter had given me when she left for college 15 years ago, and the plaque I'd received for 25 years of service. I didn't take much. Most of what mattered couldn't fit in a cardboard box. I'm so sorry, Eleanor, Janet whispered, glancing nervously toward the security guard waiting to escort me out. This isn't right. It is what it is, I replied, but inside I knew better. This wasn't just wrong. It was potentially illegal. For the past 4 years, I'd been meticulously documenting financial irregularities that had accelerated since Bryce joined the company. I'd sent detailed memos up the chain, flagged suspicious patterns, and even presented evidence of backdated reports. All of it had been dismissed, buried, or returned with instructions to focus on more pressing matters. As I walked through the lobby one last time, the security guard awkwardly held the door. "Have a good weekend, Mrs. Vance," he said, clearly uncomfortable with his role in this charade. I nodded politely. "I believe I will." The drive home felt surreal. 29 years of dedication ended with a manila folder and a cardboard box. The April rain tapped against my windshield as I navigated the familiar streets of Cleveland, Ohio, past the cathedral where Thomas and I had married, beyond the school where our daughter had graduated, toward the modest home I'd maintained on my own since becoming a widow 12 years ago. I thought about the sacrifices I'd made for Apex, the missed school recitals, the family vacations cut short, the countless evenings spent reviewing documentation that nobody else had the patience to examine. I'd given the company my prime years, believing in the security my pension would eventually provide. When I pulled into my driveway, I sat quietly for a moment, allowing myself to feel the weight of what had happened. Bryce Calloway had been with the company just 6 months. He'd arrived with a reputation for streamlining operations, which was corporate speak for cutting costs at any price. I'd known we would eventually clash when I refused to certify compliance on his latest cost-cutting initiative, a measure that skirted several regulatory requirements. What I hadn't anticipated was how quickly and ruthlessly he would move to eliminate me. Inside, I made myself tea and sat at my kitchen table, finally opening the severance package. The terms were insulting. 3 months' salary in exchange for waiving all rights to future claims against the company. A gag order disguised as severance. No pension, no healthcare continuation, no acknowledgement of nearly 3 decades of service. The document required my signature by 5 p.m. tomorrow. They were counting on fear and desperation to make me sign quickly, without consulting anyone. This wasn't standard practice. It was a targeted effort to rob me of what I'd earned. I set the papers aside and walked to my home office where I kept my personal records. Behind a row of family photo albums sat a fireproof lockbox, my insurance policy. For 4 years, I'd been bringing home copies of troubling financial documents, keeping detailed notes of conversations, and saving emails that outlined patterns of misconduct. Not because I planned to use them, but because my professional instincts told me something wasn't right. I opened the box and reviewed its contents: loan applications with falsified data, quarterly reports with manipulated figures, emails instructing staff to backdate quality control certifications. It was all there. Over 1,000 pages of evidence showing systematic fraud that had accelerated under Bryce's direction. I'd reported every issue through proper channels, only to be ignored or sidelined. I reached for my phone, scrolling to a contact I hadn't called in years. Marcus Thorne had been Apex's chief financial officer before leaving to work for the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC. He'd always respected my diligence, even when others found it tedious. It's time, I thought, as my finger hovered over his name. The next morning, I woke with a clear purpose. After speaking with Marcus for nearly 2 hours the previous evening, I had a path forward. I dressed carefully in the navy suit I reserved for important meetings, as if preparing for battle. In a way, I was. Marcus had listened intently. His response was measured but resolute. "Eleanor, this isn't just wrongful termination. Based on what you're describing, Apex could be facing serious securities violations. The timing with your pension, that's just the tip of the iceberg." He explained the whistleblower protections available through the SEC and arranged for me to meet with his team on Monday morning. "Don't sign anything," he cautioned, "and secure those documents somewhere safe." I spent Saturday making copies, organizing the evidence, and preparing a detailed index. By noon, I had 3 identical packages ready. One for the SEC, one for my personal records, and one to serve as leverage if needed. My phone rang several times throughout the day. Janet from HR, Bryce Calloway, even the company's general counsel. I let each call go to voicemail. "Eleanor, we need that paperwork signed today." Bryce's voice was tense. "I can come by and pick it up if that helps." The legal counsel was more direct. "Mrs. Vance, it's imperative we receive your signed agreement before close of business. Failure to comply could jeopardize your severance package entirely." Their desperation confirmed what I already suspected. They knew they were vulnerable. At 4:30 p.m., my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Bryce standing on my porch, his expensive suit looking out of place in my modest neighborhood. I didn't answer. "Eleanor, I know you're in there," he called through the door. "This is ridiculous. Just sign the papers and we can all move on." I watched silently as he eventually placed an envelope in my mailbox and returned to his luxury sedan. Inside was another copy of the agreement with a handwritten note, "Final opportunity," signed by 9 a.m., Monday. That evening, my daughter, Elizabeth, called. "Mom, what's going on? You sound different." I decided against downplaying it. "I was terminated yesterday," I said simply. "What? But you're just days away from your full pension. They can't do that." "They did," I replied. "But don't worry, I'm handling it." After we hung up, I sat in my living room thinking about Monday's meeting. For years, I'd tried to address these issues internally. I'd been loyal, discreet, and professional. But Apex had made its choice, and now I would make mine. I would not be silenced. Monday couldn't come soon enough. Monday morning, I drove downtown to the Federal Building. The SEC offices were imposing. Marcus met me in the lobby. He led me to a conference room where two other investigators waited: Angela Brennan, a senior enforcement attorney, and James Weston, a forensic accountant. For the next 3 hours, I walked them through my documentation, the irregular financial reporting, the backdated certifications, the pattern of revenue manipulation that intensified after Bryce Calloway's arrival. James examined the financial documents with growing concern. "These discrepancies aren't small," he noted. "The company has been systematically overstating revenues by at least 18% for the past 2 years. That's securities fraud." "And you reported these issues internally?" Angela asked. "Multiple times," I confirmed, showing them copies of my memos and emails. When Bryce joined 6 months ago, my concerns started being rerouted to his office, where they disappeared entirely. As our meeting concluded, Angela outlined the next steps. "We'll need your formal statement, then we'll begin our investigation. Given the documentation you've provided, we may move quickly on this one." I hadn't even returned home when my phone rang. It was Janet from HR, her voice trembling. "Eleanor, something's happening. The board just called an emergency meeting. Bryce has been locked in his office all morning, and there are rumors about SEC investigators contacting our general counsel." So it had begun, faster than I'd anticipated. An hour later, my phone rang again. This time, it was Arthur Sterling, the chairman of the board, a man who had barely acknowledged my existence before. "Mrs. Vance," he said, his typically confident voice strained. "We seem to have a situation. Would you be willing to come to the office tomorrow morning to discuss matters?" "I'm afraid that won't be possible, Mr. Sterling," I replied. "Any discussions should include my attorney and potentially representatives from the Securities and Exchange Commission. I'm sure you understand." The silence on the other end was profound. Finally, he cleared his throat. "I see. Perhaps we can arrange something more formal then." By Wednesday morning, the storm had fully broken. Local business publications ran headlines about an SEC investigation into Apex Industries, sending the company's stock into a tailspin. I received a formal letter from Apex's legal department, withdrawing my termination notice and placing me on administrative leave with full benefits pending an internal review. It was a transparent and pathetic attempt to mitigate damages. At 10 a.m., my attorney, Barbara, a woman tough as nails, accompanied me to a meeting at Apex headquarters. We were shown to the main boardroom, where Arthur Sterling waited with outside counsel and 3 other board members. Bryce Calloway was conspicuously absent. "Thank you for coming, Mrs. Vance," Arthur began. "We've initiated a comprehensive internal investigation into the concerns you've raised." Barbara spoke before I could. "Let's be clear, Mr. Sterling. My client didn't suddenly raise these concerns after her termination. She documented and reported them repeatedly over a period of 4 years, as her job required. The company's decision to ignore those reports and then terminate her days before her pension vested speaks volumes." Arthur shifted uncomfortably. "Yes, well, I want to personally assure Mrs. Vance that her termination has been rescinded. Including my pension? I asked directly. Of course, he replied quickly. In fact, we're prepared to offer you a consulting role after your retirement. We value your expertise. Barbara interjected. My client isn't making any decisions today, and any discussion about future arrangements should be preceded by a full accounting of how her previous concerns were suppressed. As we prepared to leave, Arthur made one final appeal. Eleanor, we're hoping you might consider speaking with the SEC investigators about the corrective actions we're taking. Your support would be invaluable. I looked at him directly for the first time. Mr. Sterling, I've spent 29 years dedicated to this company's compliance. During that time, I filed 47 major reports documenting serious irregularities. I sent 16 memos specifically addressing the issues now under investigation. I requested 9 meetings with executive leadership, of which only 2 were granted, and neither resulted in action. At what point in that history did I have your support? The room fell silent. I will cooperate fully with both the internal investigation and the SEC, I continued, but I will be speaking only to the facts, as I always have. As Barbara and I walked out, she whispered, perfectly stated. By Friday, exactly 1 week after my termination, the story had evolved into a full-blown corporate scandal. An internal memo announced Bryce Calloway's immediate suspension. The company's stock had dropped nearly 30%. Business journals now referred to me as the whistleblower who exposed Apex. The attention was uncomfortable, but things were about to get personal. Bryce, in a desperate move, gave an interview claiming I had performance issues and was bitter about being passed over for a promotion. He was trying to paint me as a disgruntled employee out for revenge. He was trying to attack my credibility. Barbara called immediately. Don't respond to any of it. Let the official channels handle this. I wasn't planning to respond, but I was going to do something else. The next morning, I drove to my bank and asked for access to my safe deposit box. Inside, I removed a sealed envelope I'd placed there 3 years ago. It contained copies of email exchanges between Bryce's predecessor and 2 board members, discussing ways to manage appearances financially during a critical acquisition. I had found them accidentally while archiving old emails, and something told me to secure them separately. They weren't directly related to the current issues, but now, with Bryce attempting to undermine my credibility, they provided crucial context. They proved the rot went deeper and had been there for years. I called Marcus immediately. I have something you need to see. It changes the entire narrative. The emergency board meeting was called for Monday morning. The additional documentation I'd provided had dramatically accelerated the investigation. Marcus called me from outside the meeting room. It's chaos in there, he reported. The SEC enforcement team just presented their preliminary findings. 3 board members have resigned on the spot. Bryce is trying to claim he was following established practices, but no one's buying it anymore. By noon, Apex issued a press release announcing a leadership restructuring. It confirmed the resignation of 4 board members, including Arthur Sterling, and the termination of Bryce Calloway, for cause. That afternoon, the interim CEO, a woman named Patricia Donovan, who had always treated me with professional respect, requested a meeting. Eleanor, she began, looking exhausted but determined. The company is in crisis, and you're at the center of it. Not because you did anything wrong, but because you were the only one who consistently did what was right. She slid a folder across the table, eerily similar to the one Bryce had presented just 11 days earlier. This officially rescinds your termination, reinstates your employment retroactively, and confirms your full pension vesting, she explained. It also includes an additional compensation package, a sum equal to 5 years of your salary, full health care coverage for life, and a formal apology from the board. She paused. We're also establishing a new corporate ethics division. We'd like you to help design it as a consultant after your retirement. Justice, it seemed, had finally arrived. 6 months later, I sat in a federal courtroom. watching as Bryce Calloway and 2 former board members entered guilty pleas to securities fraud charges. The man who had so casually ended my career now looked diminished, his arrogance replaced by defeat. The Apex scandal had become a case study in corporate governance failures. The SEC had awarded me a substantial whistleblower payment, 15% of the penalties assessed against the company. Combined with my pension and the settlement, I had more financial security than I'd ever imagined possible. I established a scholarship fund for women pursuing careers in corporate ethics, naming it after Thomas. My daughter, Elizabeth, moved back to Cleveland to be closer, bringing my 2 grandchildren with her. One evening, as we sat watching the sunset over the lake, Elizabeth asked a question that caught me off guard. "Mom, do you regret staying at Apex all those years, given how it ended?" I considered this carefully. "No," I finally answered. "I regret that it was necessary to expose them, but I don't regret my work there. Integrity isn't just about being honest when it's easy. It's about maintaining your principles even when, especially when, it costs you something." That, I realized, was perhaps the most meaningful outcome of all. Not the vindication, not the financial security, but the knowledge that my choices had shown my daughter what it meant to stand firm in your values, regardless of the consequences. Eleanor Vance's story is a powerful reminder that no one is too small to make a difference, and that the truth, no matter how deeply it's buried, will always find its way to the light. What an incredible story of justice and perseverance. Now, we want to hear from you. What would you have done in Eleanor's position? Have you ever witnessed corporate greed on this level? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this story of justice served satisfying, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring that notification bell so you never miss a single story. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.